So you're building out a software product. You may be building a SaaS business, you may be going to build an enterprise software, but through the evolution of that software and evolution of those services, there's going to be different points where you need to start looking at the authorization logic. So here are the 5 common times we've seen from our own experience and also all the users of Cerbos where authorization logic needs to be looked at, analyzed, evolved, changed, and monitored. Let's start off with what I like to call the blissful day as roles, or kind of the us v them. You start building your application, you start off with very simple checks like, is the user's email address got our company's domain in it? If so, then they're an admin, they should be able to do stuff. Or if it doesn't, they're a user or a customer, and they should be able to do a subset of the action side of the applications. This works very early on, but you very quickly run into a scenario where you're going to start getting requirements or requests or changes coming through from your users that want to be able to scope things down a bit. So you might go in and add another role, for example, like a read-only user that can only actually read the content inside of the system. So that's pretty easy to add, but this can very quickly kind of snowball and get out of hand. The second time you might run into this scenario is around feature gating. So your application's been built, you've got those kind of basic roles in there, but now you're starting to grow and you're starting to scale, and you want to make sure your product is packaged in a way that you can offer the right product to the market, and also make sure you can control things like quotas and access to different parts of the application. So you might go in and set up your authorization logic to base what access the user has based on what package they've bought. And that's fine for now, but 6 months from now, your sales team might want to start repackaging products or features to better suit the market that they're trying to sell into. So now you have this interesting problem where you need to evolve and change the authorization logic, where you'll have some users be on legacy package, some users on a new package. You might have some users or tenants inside of your system that may have a trial of a specific feature on top of their package. So you need this kind of flexibility in your policy to kind of meet and control the feature access based on policy and that matches requirements coming from the team. The third time you might need to start looking at this is around if you're starting to go global. So you start your business, let's say in the UK or Europe, and you've kind of got that initial attraction, and then you want to start growing up. And one of the obvious things you then want to go and do is start selling to different regions of the world. You might go into the US, you might go into the Middle East, you might go into Asia. As you go to these different parts of the world, your authorization logic and your requirements around permissions are going to change. There'll be new regulatory frameworks, particularly if you're in regulated businesses, that you need to comply with. You need to go and make sure you've got the processes in place around data locality and making sure users in the right locations can only access those data sets that they're allowed to. If you have users in California, there's a whole set of rights that users and customers and people in California have. You need to make sure your authorization logic inside of your system is flexible to adjust without you having to go rewrite all your entire code base. The fourth time you might run into this is if you really want to start going enterprise. So things are going really well, you've grown up, you've scaled out the product, you've got lots of different packages, you've gone into different parts of the world, new geographies coming on board, and you start getting those first enterprise sales deals. Obviously a great thing for the business, but one of the first challenges you run into is how do you shoehorn bringing a 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 person enterprise business onto your platform where you only have maybe 3 roles. It just doesn't work. These businesses have reporting lines and structures and cost centers that they need to be able to reflect in the permissions that get passed down into whatever application you're putting out there. So you need to make sure you have an authorization system that can manage per tenant or per scope access models without you having to go back to the development team and hard code that logic in the application code. So having that flexibility in place so you can bring on that next enterprise customer just for a simple policy change is really a key capability for you really to start unlocking deals and keep your pipeline going. And the final stage is when things are really going well, and this might happen sooner depending on industry, but it's making sure that you have the proper audit and compliance framework in place. So every decision that goes through your system, if you're in regulated industries, you need to have an indelible audit log. At this time, this user tried to do this action on this resource and is allowed or denied by this particular policy. If you're in finance, you're in healthcare, if you're in insurance, you're in any sort of government organization, having these in place and having a strict audit trail is key. And like I said, you might need this earlier on, or you might need this slightly later in your journey, but getting the foundations right means you don't have to redo that work down the line. Taking an externalized authorization policy-based access control approach will allow you to tick off that box and pass those compliance checks and speed through to your next iteration, next cycle, and next your feature. So those 5 things, simple days of roles, moving on to managing features, going global and making sure you can support the different regulatory requirements, bringing on board those enterprise customers and partners who need a different organization or a management structure for their permissions. And finally, that audit use case are the 5 times where having an externalized policy-based access control model will save you a ton of time and actually get you through into the next deal, get you on the next sale, go and meet your next regulatory requirement, get that next compliance certification with ease without you having to rewrite your application code base every single time. Looking forward to chatting more. Thanks.